Hello, my friends, especially those of you who are confronted with abhorrent, cruel warfare and who have had all of your hopes and expectations, all of your values attacked and made unsafe. How can we possibly respond when we are faced with what is the very definition of what human beings call evil? Evil is defined as being attacked and your life being threatened and made impossible for no good reason. This is something that happens to you without explanation, without understanding, out of the blue, out of nowhere, and you get dragged into a stream of negativity where the hostility against you is such that it makes no sense, and you lose your way, you become confused. And the reason this is so terrible is that it takes away all of our human standards, all of our beliefs, our trust, our faith, our hope in the human condition not being senseless or absurd or impossible, and certainly not to be faced with the kind of forces that are only out to destroy us by any means possible. So how do we make sense of it? Well, if we look at the history of philosophy, there are a lot of philosophers speaking about these things, but the one or the two that I want to talk about today are Hannah Arendt and Karl Popper. So Hannah Arendt framed it in a very, very astute way. She spoke of the banality of evil. And by that she meant that when everything changes and this kind of force of hostility takes over your life, you become aware that everybody around you is gradually getting attuned to this and giving in to it, and assuming that this is sort of normal, and that the people who might be able to help you refuse to do so because they don't want to get dragged into that way of experiencing life. So that's a very dangerous toppling into the banality, the triviality, the everyday occurrence of the things that make no sense and that make your life meaningless and impossible. But what she discovered was that even the people who perpetrating these evil deeds, they become habituated to it and they think it's normal. So this is our gravest danger, to let these kinds of things be normalized and to not push back. The same happens when a child is bullied in school and those around that child casually say, oh, that's just normal bullying, or that's just what kids do. We must never accept this kind of hostility, this kind of aggression, this kind of destruction, this kind of evil. We mustn't allow it to become normalized. We must call it out. We must ally against it, and we must push back on it and expose it. That's what needs to happen with bullying, and that's what needs to happen with war too. This is why we have the European Union. This is why we have NATO. This is why we have the United Nations. These organizations need to step up to the plate, and they need to have much tighter regulations that make it impossible for them to be put to a hold or paralyzed by one of their members. So it should be very clear that if anybody behaves in this bullying, aggressive, hostile, destructive manner, that immediately everything stops and everything starts working in a different way. And this is where Popper's work comes in, because Popper is the one who formulated the idea that humankind needs to be tolerant of each other and work with an acceptance of diversity and completely try to integrate and accept each other. With one exception, there should be zero tolerance for intolerance. So anybody who isn't willing to be open-minded and to be cooperative and to encourage difference and value diversity, and who becomes racist or denigrating or aggressive or hostile and wants to ban certain types of people, those people alone should receive zero tolerance. So it becomes very important to know what we're faced with. Is this a fair situation of combat, of difference of opinion, or is there really a different situation here where one party has moved from tolerance, has moved from cooperation and peaceful togetherness to a situation where they're willing to become a force for evil, wanton destruction, cruelty, torture? These things should be intolerable to all of us. We must never give in to them. So this is where we need to notice that sometimes in history, some people become corrupted by their power. They start to believe that they're outside of the norm, that they can do things and take actions that are normally totally unacceptable. This is what de Lamartine phrased as saying, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that was repeated by Lord Acton. These are the things we need to look out for. That is what we need to not allow to happen for any one human being, to have that much power over others. Because then we flip from a tolerant being together to a being together that is based on the completely erroneous notion that one party may sometimes take sovereignty over another party and may attack, maim, and destroy. Not acceptable. We cannot run a world like that. We have to muck in together, stand in solidarity, support those who need support, and build and construct a society based in diversity and peacemaking. That's got to be our underpinning belief that we absolutely stick to. And we see now that we are too weak at this, in the same way in which schools sometimes have to discover that they are too weak in standing up against bullies, and they need to learn to really expose it and work with it and make sure that anyone who is bullied dares to speak up about it. So we must do the same in politics, and the United Nations needs to have much more layers of human exchange, understanding, and teaching of the people who participate in that organization. And it needs to have rules and regulations to pick up intolerance and to have ways of eliminating that and bringing those people inclined that way around to another way of working again. And that is a very important existential key. This is not about escalating wars and becoming as bad as the aggressor, although when it has gotten to that point, that is probably the right thing to do. But it is about preventing that at an earlier stage and being much more aware of the dangers that are building and standing together to stop that from happening. So there is much to learn from what we are watching, observing, and how that makes us feel. But the one conclusion we mustn't draw is that human beings are bad and wrong and can't be trusted. Because what we have also seen is in this horrendous situation, many human beings have risen above these confrontations and have become engaged in helping each other, in reorganizing everything, in standing together, in creating ways of overcoming together, and in being caring and loving for the people who are victimized by it. And that should give us all hope. It is a hope based in the actions of good people, not in some kind of abstract idea of hope. The hope comes from enacting this good way of living together. And when we're faced with the effects of the bad ways of living together, we know what we have to do. We have to find ways of undoing those bad ways before they go insane on us. And we have to find ways to improve people's capacity for daring to be good and daring to be mutually supportive and kind to each other. There will be many more lessons to draw as time goes by, but this is some of what I've been thinking about. I hope it's helpful to some of you. Do not give up hope. Do not despair. See what we're capable of, and let's bring out the best in human beings and not accept the worst. Take care, my friends. Take care. You're not alone.